Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I'm your host, DBJ, and I'm going to give you 9 ways to stop canceling our role playing game sessions. Now, uh, let give me the honor of allowing me to lay down my argument here. Too many times, over 40 plus years of playing games, we have in our history canceled games, sessions that just died on the vine. Real life impacts our tabletop role playing games so much, and it behooves us to not come up with solutions to this. So let's get into it. Let's get the intro done, and then let's just get directly into it while I make my argument. Thank you so much. All right, enough of that. Let's get into our discussion here. So, um, finally, I have my Twitch and YouTube chat open, so all of you co-hosts can participate in this live stream. All right, so as you know, this show begins each day, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, live, unscripted, and everything. And this week, I felt like it would be really good to talk about things we never really talk about in the tabletop gaming community. And I don't mean like taboo discussions, but things that we should have really come up with a number of solutions for. And RPG, tabletop RPG designers oftentimes either don't mention it or do just a little bit of lip service to this particular subject. And today I'm going to talk about canceled games, games that where we have them scheduled. It's hard for people to show up. When enough people do not show up, we have issues with do we continue the game? Do we not continue the game? And that sort of thing. And very few role playing games come up with concrete methods to solve this issue. So I thought I would come up with a few of my own, at least 9 ways, plus a bonus, maybe 1, 4, or 5 as we get on into our discussion. All right, so I'm going to name off the titles of these for those who really can't stick around too long, and then I'll go back and explain each one of them. So I'm going to begin with the silliest, greatest one. If you're a kid of the '80s, you'll understand, and it's called the Ladyhawke. All right, so we're going to start off with the Ladyhawke. We also have Sidekick in it as another title that I have, and if you can't stick around, I want you to think about the titles and what it means for continuing our games when the individuals we want in our games, those people are value added for us, and how that works. Okay. The other one is trope style. A fourth one is shadows and ghosts. Another one would be the fallen risen, outposts, the crew, and monster mates. All right. And just to think about what that means for for the game in general. Um, if any of you are online, hey, tired, need sleep. Oh my God, I actually made the start of the stream. Yes, you did. Thank you very much for being in here, co-host. There, I appreciate it. All right, so let's get back into the very first one, the silliest one. But if, like I said, if you're a person of a certain age, if you're like me, and I know I am, you'll understand what the Ladyhawke is. So we're going to come up with what I think are some solutions for the missing player. And when I say missing player, I'm talking about adding these solutions so that it both makes sense outside of the game and within the game. So, little history. There's a movie from the 80s starring Rutger Hauer called Ladyhawke, uh, ending Hawk with an E. And in this movie, there's a gentleman who's very mysterious, and he's a warrior. And during the day, there's a hawk that follows him around unerringly, and he seems to have a supernatural link with this hawk. But then at night, he disappears, and there's a mysterious woman in white, ghostly, very beautiful, walking through the woods and wastelands. And with her is a wolf, a strange wolf where she seems to have a supernatural link to this wolf. Well, the point of the movie is that his love, this woman, both of them can never be together, because only during a few moments during dusk and dawn do they actually get to see each other. So during the day, she transforms into a hawk. During the evening, he transforms into a wolf. And they are trying to break this curse while, of course, he's adventuring and she's being rather mysterious. Just check the movie out. But what I think is cool about what we can use for our role-playing games from the Ladyhawke technique is that when a player is missing, maybe within the game context in your game, that person becomes a familiar, an animal, a creature. They transform into something that can follow the party and either not participate at all. No die rolls, no one's taking over their character, but they follow along as a living thing. Or they become, like I said, a familiar or an animal, as if it was summoned by an animal to go along with the player character group. And because that player is missing, it wouldn't be Mike say, it wouldn't be that hard for a player to, I mean, for the game master to include like a wolf or dire wolf, using the wolf as an example, wolf, a dire wolf, or some other more massively capable creature into the group to represent that player character controlled by the group, or maybe one other player in the group. Maybe that the person that can't come in and says, hey, that's my cousin that plays in the game, I can't be there. Let them run my character as a dire wolf for that purpose. And then when I come back, I'll just quote unquote transform back into my PC. Another co-host, Mike Gould, says missing players take a bit of thought. It can be done. With the player's consent, they can have another player run their PCs, or you can have a player roll a bunch of D20s, and those rolls are recorded for use later. I've had players fall through weak spots in the Feywild where time is different. Yep. All those are great suggestions, Mike. Yeah, exactly. And Mike's on the same, we're on the same page, because you'll see when I get into these other 8 ones. Yeah. Tiny Seep says, I'm really guilty of this, canceling games if someone isn't available. And so you guys know I float positive. So if I have a complaint about something, I'm always thinking, what's the solution to it? So this is one solution, the Ladyhawke. Now you could play it exactly like the movie where 2 players are bonded, but neither one can be there necessarily at the same time. But you don't need to do that. The point is, a player becomes an active but not additive to the game. Wolf, a fairy, maybe something animalistic, maybe a golem or whatever, and then when they come back, they become their player character, and then we just explain it that way. The next one is I'm calling it sidekicking it, and sidekicking it is basically the act of the player character has a character, but they are essentially a sidekick to somebody else. So the person that knows they really can't be there, they make their character up, but they basically hand their character off, right? My character is your character's sidekick. Maybe, and a sidekick doesn't necessarily need to be weaker. So maybe you've seen this in a lot of tropes where you have a young character, but that character, young character, Luke Skywalker as an example. I'm trying to think of some other, Bilbo in Lord of the Rings or something, and they have a person who wants to care for them and protect them and teach them, but they can't always be there. Or if they are there, maybe they're quiet, but they're like powerful and strong, like a small prince, but they have a really burly bodyguard or something. And so maybe a player makes up their character for the purpose of being someone else's sidekick. Hey, I'm making my fighter, I'm making my ranger, whatever, using Dungeons and Dragons or any other game set. and going like, listen, when I'm not there, you get to use my character as your character's sidekick, right? My character is intrinsically tied to someone else, a loved one, a sibling, someone tied to a royal bloodline, a life debt. Like Han Solo, Chewbacca had a life debt to Han Solo. So when Han was in trouble, Chewbacca was going to beat ass, right? And it's not that Chewbacca. This is going to sound terrible, but Chewbacca was the dog in Star Wars, and you never kill the dog, but the dog gets to hang around the party. And what I mean by that is that the strong silent type, the extremely loyal, that character is intrinsically tied to another character, and we don't ever want to see that bond broken. And so maybe that can happen as well. Getting back into our co-hosts is Mike says, I like the familiar idea though. Yeah, acting when the player isn't there, they magically, biologically, nanotech wise, whatever, it doesn't really matter. They become the familiar of the group, right? Like, let's say someone, let's do science fiction. A character's a hacker, they're a technologist or something. They're in a group, but they can't be there. But they have a drone. They are the rigger, right? They control drone. Player's not there, but the drone is doing Overwatch for the party. Player's not there, but their presence can add something to the group, right? Maybe not physically, they're not there fighting and shooting and able to die or something. And even if they quote unquote die, the device gets broken, the wolf gets stabbed, the hawk gets captured, and then the next time they show up, they physically arrive, transform whatever into that character again. Mike continues to say, Session 0, PCs choose a familiar form, like a basic animal, and also whose familiar they are. If they're absent, they become that PC's familiar. Awesome. Exactly. And listen, it sounds like I'm being complicated, but sometimes we get caught up a little bit too much with semantics in the sense of how do we explain someone being absent? Well, why don't we make it cool? Why don't we make it part of our world? If you're in an arcane world and let's make this up. Humanity has ties to bloodlines from their I don't know, from the primordial creation of the world. And if someone concentrates enough, their bloodline is connected to bears and wolves and I don't know, fish and birds and maybe other predators or something. And then a PC gets to pick one, and they're the extra special individuals that are able to transform into these things. And you can even make a story around it. Maybe they are unable to control their transformations. And so when the PC becomes a dire wolf, it's not like they can talk and act. They just become this wild dire wolf that knows it's loyal to the group, but is a little bit wild. So when the player character is like, man, I got to do overtime tonight, I can't show up. Well, it's because they can't control it. All right. So we got the Ladyhawke, we've got the sidekick in it. And also with the sidekick in it, it's also possible for maybe a player that knows that they aren't able to be there very often. Also, what you could do is you could make a bunch of lower level, simpler made, using like if the game does have sidekick rules or does have like you're using retainers, henchmen, hirelings rules, and that player that can't really be there very often shoots in. I'm just making this up. Players are 5th to 6th level, but their sidekicks, the side characters like 2nd to 3rd level, weaker, but there's more of them. Then the players that can't be there very often but really want to play, they pick one of the weaker characters. Now, they may feel a little bit like, I'm not as powerful as I'm not really having an impact. But also, this Session 0, you go, hey, listen, this group has like 6 NPCs in it. Like someone's tending the animals, someone is a bodyguard, someone's a scout, someone is the cook, whatever. And you just pick up that sidekick and go along. And if they kick the bucket, they just pick another sidekick, or they control multiple sidekicks for everyone. Yeah, Mike is saying in the chat is saying, yeah, they still pick who they sidekick to though. Exact, like they can. I'm sorry, going to the beginning of the comment says if a player wants to play themselves, not a familiar, then they can choose a default attack or spell to make it easier for others to run them. Exactly. Hey, listen, here are my 3 basic spells I use to attack with. I use I'm going to come up magic missile, burning hands, and my web spell or sleep spell or something. And usually when I attack with my staff. But then as my secondary thing, I'll use or if we're at range, then I'll use my hand crossbow or something. And they go, oh, okay, cool. I'll use those. Yep. Yep. Cantrips are worth their weight in gold for this. Exactly. And they can. This is I how ignore the semantics of this. Maybe, just maybe, because that player's not there, the way we balance encounters and the power level of the group will diminish significantly if 1 or more players isn't there. If you have a 6-player group and 2 people don't play, there's only 4, and those characters are not there, then that power seems to drop down. But what you could do is, and we're going to get into the next one, which is called Shadows and Ghosts, where the player characters, and I'm calling this Shadows and Ghosts for a reason. Hold on. When the player characters fade to the background, they just become like a shadow. They're there, but they're not really there. As a game master, you could say, well, listen, normally if that player was there, these are a bunch of the spells and attacks they would have. So you guys have access to their spells as if they are casting them, and just only pick like 1 or 2. But the player character isn't there. So you still have the benefit of some of their actions to be in there, which don't tie to any of the other player characters' initiative orders or anything. You just pick an initiative number like 20 and 10 for Dungeons and Dragons, right? D20 system. And go, okay, on initiative 20, this is a spell they would cast or something, or this is a weapon attack they would use, or on initiative 10, this is a spell or something. And then that spell goes off as if they are there, and we just ignore the fact there's no armor class, they're just faded in the background. Tired Needs Sleep says, sounds like a great backstory for a druid learning to control their awakened powers. See, and it already makes I'm thinking of the intrinsic story involved in it, in regards to solving the issue. So we did the Ladyhawke and we did the sidekick in it, right? Sidekick in it also kind of works with new players who not only can't commit to long sessions, they kind of want to dip in and dip out, so they could pick up a sidekick kind of character. And listen, if you tell a player they have the ability to transform into some kind of exotic animal, listen, they're going to attach them, even if it means they're less powerful. There's something really cool about turning into, like, I don't know, a hawk or a wolf or an alligator or a snake or a spider or something like that. There's something cool about that. So I don't think they'll be against it. But now let's get into trope style. Tropes in terms of acting, stage acting, are like a bunch of characters that travel around and they're like entertainers. They're tropes. And in a lot of Shakespeare uses the idea of tropes, also pronounced troops, like military troops, but it's Troupe. It's a group of entertainers. Sometimes they play music, or they are acrobats, and they do funny things. Sometimes you get like clowns that do that. And in Shakespeare, you'll have the troops in the corner kind of talking about what's happening with our main characters and telling the audience what's going on. Well, in role-playing games, there's a game called Ars Magica that embraces the troop style. And what happens is each player character, you've got 4 players in your group, and each of them makes a main character. In Ars Magica, it is ancient. It is a alternate history of ancient Europe, and there are 3 pillars of power. There's the church, there is magic, and then there is the political system. And in it, the player characters play magi. They're magical individuals, and politically, the countryside is scared of magic because they could overthrow the nobility, and the church is scared of them because they're basically evil. If you're magic, you're evil. And so in troop style play, each character makes a main character, and the rules basically, if you make a magi, you are a head above any other type of person in the world. you are literally more powerful than other people. And then below that, for each player, let's say you got 4 players, so they make 4 wizards for Ars Magica. Then below that, each of the other characters that are made gets 3 individuals that are loyal to them, much like sidekicks. And so when you play the game, one player, each player has a main character, and then they have a bunch of what they call custos or grogs that are less powerful than them. And of course, the more powerful character gets a lot of the danger and focus put on them, but the minor characters get to shine because they get to save the life of the more powerful person. And you'd be surprised how interesting it is to play in a game where one character is more powerful and the other character is less powerful. So how do we translate this into our role-playing games that have a Troupe style of play? Well, if you decide to play a game that has a level system or point system, what you do is you allow the players to you divide the points up. So if, let's say you're playing 6th level of D20 game, Dungeons and Dragons, or any other derivation thereof, but allow them to make multiple characters that equal 6 levels. So maybe they make a 3rd level character, a 2nd level character, and a 1st level, or they make a 4th level character and 2 1st level characters, whatever. They make a main character and some sidekicks. Okay, but what happens is those sidekicks are given to the other players, so that if someone's missing and they can't be there, the other players can still play through those sidekicks. So what happens is, as people are not able to show, the people who are there are the main characters. Everybody else is a sub character. And I know it sounds a little bit confusing, but what happens is, much like a television show, you can move the spotlight around. So if you have Ariana, the paladin, and Dougal, the mysterious thief or something, and then they each have maybe 2 side characters. If the player character for Dougal can't be there, at least Ariana gets to be the main character, and she's followed by her sidekicks. And so you have this moving, the troupe gets to move around a little bit in the background as one character is playing maybe 4 levels of a character, but the other person's playing 2 second level characters, and they get to be like, oh, well, I'm like playing 2 4, and basically combined together, they make up the power of the other character. And then when they die off, they leave the group. They have reasons why they don't have to be there. Maybe some of those characters get to move up into a spot when another character dies away. So now you have a legacy here, whether it has to do with family or prestige or bloodlines or something. And so you have this revolving thing of main characters, like secondary characters, loyal to the main characters, and then it's like a churning soup when people can be there and not be there. I know it sounds kind of strange, but I just follow along. And let's think about it. Now we have something I'm calling shadows and ghosts. And shadows and ghosts are not just that we assume that the player character that can't be there, the characters that can't be there because the players can't be there, fade to the background, but we're saying that they literally fade to the background. The character that can't be there is their backstory is that they are an ancient ally or ancestor that's following the party. And some of the time, going back to Star Wars, where Obi-Wan Kenobi gets struck down, but is still part of the group, kind of in the background as a ghost following one of the player characters. Maybe they come to the character in their sleep. Maybe they physically appear as a ghostly form somewhere in the party and whatnot. So when the character's not there, they are an attached shadow or ghost to the party, literally following with the party, moaning in the background, maybe kind of possessing one of the player characters. Maybe they go into an object that the player character has, their sword. Imagine having an ancient sword, and when commanded, the spirit of an ancient warrior comes out of the sword when the player shows up to play their character, and they become a physical entity fighting along with the players. But maybe that character, when the players go to sleep, the ancient warrior, kneels before the character with the magic sword and whatnot, and says, "I will always be loyal as long as you wield this weapon, my great great granddaughter," or whatever, and then whoop, disappears into the sword, and you're like, "Oh, what the?" So shadows and ghosts is another option. So we began with the Ladyhawke. We talked about sidekicking it. We have Troupe style, and now we're talking about shadows and ghosts. And this is a great way for, let's say, the players have to cross a huge ravine, and then they have to slip into an underground dungeon, and then they have to swim. And it's like, well, how the heck? Hey, Des, this changes my mind about NPCs. Yeah, see, and then all of a sudden, you're like, well, if Carl and Joanna couldn't show up for the game, how the heck did they follow us there? Well, they were the shadows and ghosts following along with the player characters. Maybe one of the player characters is psychic or a wizard, and with just a little bit of concentration, they can call upon their their loved ones to show up for their when they're besieging the castle or something. But it takes a lot of energy for them to concentrate to bring them from this world, from the nether world here to this world or something. And when they disappear, well, in reality, they had to work. They had overtime. They had a family emergency or something. But when they show up out of the shadows and ghosts. And we can tie this into a story. So I'm not just talking about them fading to the background, and we just have to accept it with this odd semantics and how they're there or not there. I'm saying we can add this as a storyline into our group, right? Hey Dojo, what's going on? All right, so we did the Ladyhawke, the sidekick in it, the Troupe style, shadows and ghosts. You guys under shadows and ghosts. And now we're going to talk about Fallen Risen. Now, this really comes. It sounds like it comes from like fallen angels or demons rising above the fallen risen, but this doesn't necessarily need to be angelic or demonic or devilish or fiendish or anything. But the idea here is a power greater than the PCs, much like ancient Greek and Roman stories and mythology, something beyond the player's power is engaged and is intrinsically involved in the player's motivations. A lot of how we have the quest giver. A lot of times it's the old man with the map in the tavern. The players go off, but maybe this is something bigger. Maybe someone broke the gods broke. There's one of the evil gods or entities or something that was cast out, and now they're wrecking the world. And the other gods are like, well, we made a promise not to involve ourselves directly, but we'll send agents, right? They send an angel to help the party, or a demon rises up from the ground who's there to watch over the soul of one of the player characters, and when they die, they'll be pulled to hell. That becomes the player character that can or cannot show up at different times, right? There literally is a beam of light from the sky that brings their character down to join the group, to fight by their side, to then be called back elsewhere, or to watch out because the eyes of evil meth draw is looking upon them and disappears or something. Mufa, one of our co-hosts, says, I might have use of a trope play method soon, starting a new game and only have one player so far. Other people might try to randomly drop in. Exactly. And listen, when we have NPCs like I said, the cook, the bodyguard, the scout, the surveyor, you come up with we can come up with reasons why they're there, but they're not always involved in the major aspects. Think of the military, right? We have soldiers, but for every soldier, there's probably 20 other jobs people have to support a soldier in what they're doing. You have the armory person, and you have people who handle, again, food services and other supply methods and whatnot. And of course, we have scouts and spies and intelligence officers and whatnot. And we can use that for our games where, sure, the cook is the cook, but maybe that cook is a little bit more than a little bit. Thinking of old Steven Seagal movie where really he's a special forces person, but he wanted to get out of it and became a cook, right? And also when these NPCs are traveling with the party, and this is a little bit old school, using henchmen, hirelings, retainers, etc., that maybe they're learning a little bit as they go along. Sure, in the beginning, there's 0-level NPCs with 3 hit points, but after 2 months on the road, maybe they're now 2nd level. We just never bothered asking them about anything. So with the Fallen Risen idea, it's a power untowards anything else. If you want to do this science fiction wise, we could think about Star Trek beaming in backup or a couple of more red shirts or something. If we're thinking about more arcane, or no, let's think modern day. Modern day, black helicopter comes over, someone zip lines down on the line. Boom, they show up with their weapons ready. They're the new characters, right? Tired Need Sleep knew exactly what I was talking about. Under Siege, the only good Steven Seagal film, which is under debate. I think there's maybe one or two prior to that, and then it just goes all downhill. It's just like, oh, almost feel, yeah, almost feel like maybe I feel kind of dirty watching his movies after that period of time. But you guys get the point, right? There's always a way for in a present day procedurals, and I'm bringing up words that we're going to bring up later in this live stream, but like in a procedural with police officers, you watch your television show about cops and detectives and FBI agents running around, and what do? They get on the radio, they get on a cell phone, we need backup, and guess what happens? Eventually, some people do come in and show up as backup. Sometimes they don't, and that can be your player characters that show up or don't show up, where, I mean, let's be honest, some players, maybe they're not into the role playing thing. They want to roll some dice, and they want to roll some dice, kick ass, and take names, right? And for that player, maybe sitting there doing the role playing, and they're kind of twiddling their thumbs, and they really just want to show up for the action. Maybe this is a good way to give them a character and say, listen, you're here, you are fighter. Here's some dice. You attack and hit things. You are barbarian. And they go, great. And out of the heavens, angelic wings, golden light, boom, they show up, their wings disappear, the golden light fades, they're dirty and scruffy with like blood under their fingernails, and they're just like, I'm ready to fight alongside you. They fight, and at the end of the battle, they're just like, go on, I will be here for you, but I am summoned back to my world. And they disappear, they go back home. What a great story, right? Instead of going, twiddling thumbs, scratching your chin. How do we figure out how to get them in and out of the game? Duh, magic. Okay? Mind you, the ideas I'm coming up with, do they blend with some of the other ideas? Of course. Of course. Could that same warrior be considered, that player's character be a spell from the wizard, where the wizard summons an ancient warrior from the past or something, and they arrive, and then now they're a player character, blah, 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 doing a thing, and then they disappear because the spell ends, i.e., they couldn't show up anymore, right? Sure. Why not? What? Hey, my player character is your character's magic item. Great story and everything. Exactly reason why. How did they get across the chasm? Because he was on the back of one of the player characters in a sheath, right? All right, so now let's get into Outposts. So Outposts, in the RPG community, we hear something known as the West Marches. And this reminds me of the anime My Hero Academia. Yeah, our power levels are not 9,000 at this moment. So I feel in my throat. All right, so let's talk about outposting. We're going to talk about the outpost. And in the RPG community, you've heard of this hex crawl thing known as the West Marches, where there's no specific mode of play. Theme. It's the player characters move from place to place, and the West Marches, when they move from one hex to another, things change and whatnot. Yes, this deals a little bit with the West Marches idea, but instead, in session 0, we understand that at the beginning and end of every one of our sessions, we are going to stop at an outpost. All right, so that means we're going to stop to make a camp. We're going to stop at a literal outpost city. Maybe we're going to stop at an oasis in a desert. But the idea is that we've all agreed in session 0 that the beginning and ending of each one of our games, we stop at a watering hole. We stop and make camp. We stop and we're pirates or something, and we go to a dock or an island or whatever, a flotilla where we get to resupply. And so what happens is, with an outpost game, at every beginning and end of each game, people can change. They slip in and out. All right, and we're going to get into the next one, which is called the crew, which as you can tell, each one of these kind of relates to the next one. So in an outpost, It means that maybe the players or characters are going through the wilderness. They see smoke on the horizon. The game session is about to end. We've all promised ourselves we're just going to speed forward time, and they get to the small town. It's got like 3 buildings and a place to put your horses or camels or elephants or whatever, and maybe a little resupply. Maybe they're like furriers or trappers, or they're looking for gold in them their hills. And this is the outpost. And when the next game starts, they've made friends with, they've already got a new person in the group. Maybe they need a guide. That guide is one of the player characters, or maybe someone that they left behind has caught up with them. And now the next game starts, session number 4 starts. And when session 4 starts, the character that was left behind shows up and he's like, "Oh, you wouldn't believe what I've seen." And the player characters that were there all the time, "Oh, let me tell you about what happened. All right, let's leave." And they go off and they do a thing. They encounter something. And then at the end of that session, they go back to another outpost. Now, it might be a little bit difficult if the session ends with them on a sinking boat going down a raging river, or they're trapped in a mountain where they are midway to get to the top to fight the red dragon or something. But especially if you're doing a survivalist exploration, going through the wilderness type of game, the outpost is a great way to have someone dip in and dip out. Maybe someone dips out because they are on a pilgrimage, or they have some mystic thing called them away, or they really don't like civilization and they really need to go off on their own to make amends for some evil thing they did in the past or whatnot. And then eventually they come back. There's something. The people in those hills hate me. I'll meet you on the other side of the mountain range, but I'm going to go the long way. So the player characters go through the mountain range and they have their adventure. That player couldn't be there. When they get to the other side, that player shows up and is like, "Yeah, I had to take the long way around. I hope you guys, did well without me." And they're like, "Oh, we were fine," and they move on. Okay, so we've gotten pretty long into this. So, and we're about halfway through. So if you've been here this long, just like, share, subscribe to the channel. I'm getting back into your daily dose of dice rolling here with the RPGs, and so just join in. Believe me, if you join in, you join live, you can take part. I read all the comments, so if you can't be here live, you can also join the comments. We do have a Discord server. I have to remind myself to put the links in there, but we do have a Discord server. We do have a Twitch channel as well. It broadcasts simultaneously to those channels, so please just join in when you can. Tired Neat Sleep says, if someone is missing, you could even do a one-shot from the outpost. Exactly. Say the heroes can't, or the horses or carts get stolen, and the remaining PCs have to recover them for the next session, so the PCs doesn't miss anything. Exactly. So, for example, like you said, maybe the group stays still while the other player goes off, and you kind of do a one shot, or the proverbial, we need to go resupply, we need to go hunting, fishing, or whatever, right? Because this outposting really works well for travel, because much like Star Trek, maybe it's not necessarily a straight line, it's a serpentine. We're just traveling through a region where there's a natural barrier to one side and natural cliffs to the other side, and there's mountains to one. So in this way, yes, another player could catch up to them if they made a straight line, while the PCs that are available playing are moving around. And like you said, horses or carts get stolen. Maybe there's something environmental that's happening: snow, hail, floods, fires, disease is rampant, pestilence is rampant, that kind of thing happens that causes the players to have to sit back a little bit and do a thing. And here's a great reason for somebody not to be there: they've gotten hurt, they got sick, they got lost, and it's just oh man, I sprained my ankle and my back hurt or something from that last thing. Well, he's just going to have to heal up while we go try to find our horses that ran off into the woods that got scared. And then there's some activity. Maybe they find an old temple. They go into the temple. There's only like 3 or 4 rooms in there. That's the end of the session. We promised that we'd go back to the outpost. player character jumps up, I'm ready to go. I know. Yeah, TNS. And he says like, yeah, hard to type that properly in with 200 characters. Yeah, that's why I try to presume what you guys mean when you're typing in your comments. So I try to interpret the meaning in there. So you've seen me like edit a little bit, or I'll snatch a little piece of what you're trying to say. So I hope I'm not too off with that during the show. All right, so we've done the Outpost, but and I've brought up Star Trek before and piracy, but let's talk about thanks, dear tired. So let's talk about the crew. Yeah, Des even mentions they were captured. The proverbial PC gets captured. We need to go find them, but we're also distracted by this other thing, and eventually they are released. Heck, we've seen people that have fallen down in crevices or pits, and it's like they fell down the well. It's going to take us a while to get them out of there. All right, the people in town are like, we'll get them. You go off and defend the town, or what have you, right? And then it takes exactly one session for them to be brought out of the pit, or to make a deal with the enemy so that they are exchanged or something like that. And it makes it makes for a great reasoning. Players not there, so their characters captured. That session, what they're trying to do is track down the people who captured them, and then when that player shows up, the very beginning of the next session, ropes cut, shackles broken. Thanks, guys, for saving me. Let's go on an adventure, right? That kind of thing. I bet I haven't read the comment. Mufa is probably already ahead of me. Okay. All right, Mufa. Star Trek Adventure has a system built in for players running various crew NPCs when their main characters are unavailable. Yeah, the crew. Now, the crew can be anything. Starship, pirate ship. They don't even need to be on a vehicle, but vehicles help really. I mean, vehicles are perfect for the crew, but the crew could even be criminal organization, police force, a first responders group. The crew is the crew. This is like, yeah, exactly. The crew are more. There are more people in the crew than the number of players in your group. So when someone can't be there, someone gets killed, you've got another person to pull from. But the other part of the crew is maybe you're just not needed. Your skill set isn't needed for this particular action. Or what happens a lot in the piracy or Star Trek type games, your skills are needed, but a set of circumstances prevented you from being involved in such a thing. For example, Star Trek, what often happens? We're going to beam down to the planet, and then there's something happening in orbit. There's some kind of diplomatic thing. There's static. There's some kind of disruption. There's they were attacked and now it's shut down temporarily. There's some kind of diplomatic treaty where they're not allowed to use the transporter anymore. They are orbiting the planet. They're not within range. There's always a reason why they can't be transported off the planet. So your player characters are part of a crew that goes on an adventure that only has those members with them. If you're in a criminal organization, hey, I'm the person that breaks locks. I'm another character is the forgery person. Another character has disguises. A fourth character is the gunman. But the gunman is on a deal to try to get more firearms, and they're not there because they're in some back alley somewhere trying to make a deal to get these guns. But the rest of the player characters, like Cyberpunk, like Shadowrun, or these other games, are off doing their own Blades in the Dark. They're off doing their own thing, and sure, they would sure love a heavy gun, but that player's not there. The crew is still active. And so with the idea of the crew, if they're on a mobile vessel of some sort, sailing ship, a spaceship, a caravan works really well for this. A nomadic tribe works really well for this. The crew, members of the crew go off on their adventures, and the ones that can't be there are back with the crew taking care of things. Let's go with the tribal aspect, or a caravan of some sort. Maybe there's a like 4 or 5 wagons. There's people setting up camp. One player's like, I can't be there. I need to protect the camp. The other player characters go off. They go on their adventures. Eventually, members of the crew meet up. Either a member of the crew leaves their base, the ship, pirate ship, the Star Cruiser, or whatever, and they meet up with the players, or the players come back to the to the camp, the ship or whatever. They exchange things, and boom, and this is a great way. Let's say you have a player in your group that gets really antsy trying to play the same character type. Like, oh, I wanted to play a gunman, but I also want to play someone who's very um, like a spy. They have disguises and like sneak around. What a great way for them to have multiple characters. That makes perfect sense for them to be involved in such a thing. Hey, we don't want to scare off the people we're having diplomatic relations with, so let's not send off our heavy duty security in armored, high powered weapons or armor or something. We need to send off people and make it look like we're unarmed, we're just peaceful, and so maybe those characters leave and the heavy hitters stay back, and this is the reason why. So the crew is one. Lastly, I said I would talk about 9 versions, but there's actually a little bit more. Um, Mike says we did something similar in Vampire the Masquerade, which is a great way to do it. Yep, Ghouls Night Out. When the other PCs couldn't show, the storyteller ran a game for our ghouls. We did that. You know, like when it's daylight and the vampires are all shoved down into their dark reaches so the sun doesn't hit them. What do the ghouls do? And it's Ghouls Night Out. They had the ghouls run around and doing things. For those who don't know, in Vampire the Masquerade, a ghoul is normally a human who drinks vampire blood. They haven't been bitten, but they drink vampire blood, and it makes them loyal to that vampire and gives them mostly extra physical capabilities. But there's ways. There are other game supplements that give them extra powers, and sometimes they draw extra powers from their vampire master or something. But we broke those rules all the time. We just gave all our characters like a special. Everyone had like that one unique thing. I think that's from Dungeon World or 13th Age. One unique thing. But yeah, we did that in Vampire, playing as ghouls and stuff. But yeah, absolutely. Maybe the player characters are like as members of the crew. You can also throw in storylines like they're being given orders. They sometimes have to go on a mission, but they have to be disavowed, so they can or can't be there. Maybe backup can or can't arrive at specific times. And here's a great way for a missing player to jump into the action, even though they haven't gone through everything. The black helicopter with the rappel rope, right? The one player character sneak into the compound. Now the player who wants to start shooting guns gets to show up for this session. All hell breaks loose. They show up out the sky, right? Tired Knee Sleep says, is drinking vampire blood technically drinking secondhand blood? Grim. Yeah, yeah. We we used to have some fun with that because getting a little squirrely here, going off tangent, we used to joke around about like certain people having certain types of blood. Like if you drink blood from someone who's drunk, that you might get drunk, or you drink blood from somebody who's diseased, you have little aspects of their disease and stuff. We used to play around with that quite a bit. Yeah, vampires might be the cause of certain illnesses spreading around certain communities. You never know. All right, so we did the Ladyhawke, number 1. We did the sidekicking it, number 2. We get to the end here. We did the trope style or troop style. We did Shadows and Ghosts. That's 4 here. Fallen and Risen, just showing up out of nowhere, is number 5. Outposts, number 6. The Crew, number 7. And we have Monster Mates, number 8. So Monster Mates, this one is real simple. Let's go back to Chewbacca, right? Chewbacca, in the context of Star Wars, you have a lot of humanoids, human-like people running around. Maybe they got makeup on their face and ears, much like Star Trek, right? It's just little makeup. They're basically humans. You want to say they're not? They are. It's just makeup. It's easy to do that. But maybe someone in the background isn't. We've seen this in plenty of, I'm going to call them pulp action type of stories where one of the characters in the group is like a monstrous thing. Anybody remember Thundar the Barbarian and Ukla? Anybody remember Half Hour Kids Show? Anybody remember Black Star? And he had his friend Chameleon. This is basically player wants to show up. They don't even have a character. You give them a monster. They play a monster that travels along with the group. You don't have to worry about levels. You don't even really have to worry about treasure. Character shows up. Hey, give me a Minotaur. Minotaur best friend. Best friend shows up, plays in the game, has a reason to disappear. My character's a werewolf. Werewolf shows up, fights the blah blah blah, disappears. You can pick a monster. In most role-playing games have some kind of adversary that has some stats with it. You just copy it, you send it to them, you drop it in a PDF or whatever, you copy and paste it. They get to play this monstrous mate, and they get to leave. Now, a couple of great things about monsters. For example, if the werewolf shows up and is a wolf or wolfen like creature, they are powerful when they're humans. There's a perfect reason why they're not there. Full moon's gone, player character can't be there, turn back to human, disappears and runs off. Um, some monsters go into hibernation. Some monsters show up out the wild. As a matter of fact, why can't a player that can't really be there a lot, and maybe this is an option for them to do something strange, maybe they are a mount or a pet of somebody else's, and they're not playing a character, they're just playing the animal. Maybe they're playing a griffin or a pegasus of someone else. I did that in Feng Shui, where we were Feng Shui is a role playing game, not the moving of furniture to make it, ley lines. Not that. Feng Shui, the role playing game, and we were playing like a Chinese fantasy type of game, and we were going up the Yellow River, but it was more fantastical, ancient fantasy with dragons and stuff. And I played a Kairin, like a food creature, like a golden lion that was the pet of another character who was playing a scrappy kid. It was the archetype of a scrappy kid, and we were having a great time. Like he would rub on my belly, and I would get mad because the scrappy kid's going off by himself, and no one's watching him. And I grab the scrappy kid by his underwear and pick him up. We were having it was fun. But a player character could play a monster and just be part of the group. Now, mind you, as the game master, dungeon master, storyteller, referee, negotiator, whatever the person is that is part of the game that acts as the game master, you probably want to pick a monster that is of equitable size and shape and power level. But on the other hand, it could be kind of fun if maybe the monster is a little more powerful but limited, because most adversaries, monsters, robots, ghosts and spirits and all those kind of things tend to be powerful but limited in what they can do. If a character plays a Minotaur, they're basically a barbarian, right? They're a fighter. They are just, I hit things. But maybe the player characters make a deal with troglodytes or hill giants or a Medusa or something like that along the way, and that creature that they come in contact with becomes an NPC in the group, and then when the player can be there, they go, I don't want to, I can't be here too often, and it's too stressful for me to level up my character because I wasn't there before and learn all of them. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Des, you mean sending a messenger? Right, like maybe a messenger arrives from afar, and that messenger, whether it is a gargoyle or a falcon, or maybe even just a young person who delivers missives, they join the group temporarily, and then they're off. Now, the monster mates, I take it monsters because I think players would love to play some monster or monstrous races, but if you don't want to make it as fantastical, it's very easy for you to have NPCs that show up once or twice and then they're just gone. And when that player shows up again, they just say, "Give me somebody." All right, you're playing a bodyguard. Great. What do they do? What are my numbers? Great, I'll play that character. And then when they can't show up again, maybe there's somebody else. Maybe they meet a tribal witch doctor. Tribal witch doctor. Okay, great. What can they do? I'll play that character and travel along with the group. Oh, a guide, a scout, someone who's going to lead them, be a pathfinder, and hit pathfinder that goes along. Sure, I'll be that person. I'll play that character. Maybe that's a great idea. All right, so now we're getting to the end here. I have a couple of specials here for that. My ninth one is actually more than nine. So, and this deals with how we run our games so that they don't fail. and we might even get it stretch this out a little bit tomorrow. But I think this just deserves our little tag on the end here. So for our ninth one is actually multiples, and that is instead of having one shots and instead of having long term campaigns, maybe we should rethink how we are running our games. This is just a semantics issue of getting away from this using the terms within our tabletop role playing community of just using only one shots or only campaigns. Now, usually one shots can turn into like three or four shots, but you'll get what I mean by this. So we have procedurals, we have arcs and chapters, and we have same people, different day. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's start with procedurals. Procedurals blah, 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 are in television are usually our first responder television shows. Police, fire, legal, rescue. Those are usually procedural shows. And what I mean is, in procedural shows, you have a core group of characters, and we see those core group of characters all the time. They are going after missing persons. They are shutting down crime syndicates. They are saving people from forest fires or drownings or injury. They are legal teams trying to prosecute or defend the innocent, prosecute the guilty. They are the same characters, but they're involved in different things, different days. So maybe what we might want to do is string together the same characters in a bunch of one shots. So a lot of times when we think of a one shot, we think of it's a game that begins and ends in one session, and all the characters involved in that one shot, their life ends at the end of that game session. What I'm saying is, no, the characters keep going on, but every session is a one shot. So characters are, and usually procedurals are a blend of the other 8 I mentioned before, like the crew or the sidekick in it or the Troupe style. So, for example, player characters are part of a pirate group. They're on a pirate ship. The beginning of that is they show up on a deserted island. They engage in an encounter. They run from the native peoples and monsters. They stole something. They jump back on the pirate ship. They leave. That's the end of one session. The next session, what happens? They are about to engage into a massive storm, but the storm is arcane, and there's a massive creature up in the sky, and the PCs are trying to batten down the hatches to survive the storm. And at the end of it, they beseech the creature. Maybe the players have some magic or something, and they're trying to navigate. And then at the end of that session, that's it. And then the next session, so the end of one and the beginning of another may have nothing to do with each other. Maybe they are about to engage in broadsiding each other with cannons or ballista or trebuchets or something on the ships. Maybe that at the end of that session, maybe the next one, they've been 3 weeks on a deserted island because their ship ran aground and it's got a big hole in it and they're trying to fix it, but they have to explore a little bit, right? And then you're just like, well, how did they get there? We just assume that they got there. Maybe another one is they're trying to travel through shallow rocks to get to a safe port, and they get to the safe port and they have some adventures in a tavern after a bar fight breaks out, and at the end of it they run back on their ship and they're gone. And then the next one, they are trudging through the snow, and it's like, well, how'd they get to this snowy mountainous area? And then in the distance they see their pirate ship stuck on top of a mountain somewhere on a crag, and you're like, how did that happen? Well, we'll figure it out. We'll let you know. We're in media res, right? We're in the middle of the action, and we're explaining how did the pirate ship go from the tropical island last session to stuck up in the mountainous area in the snow in this session, and then we explained how it happened. And as a game master, you could come up with all these great ideas. So it's basically a series of one shots. The second one, same people, different day, is a lot like the procedurals in the sense that it's the same characters, but each day brings along with it a new set of circumstances. So same people, different day is we're following along. It would be very much like the television shows like Survivor or Amazing Race or something. So each session we're checking in on the travels and tribulations of these individuals, much like I'm going to call it like House of the Dragon. Game of Thrones House of the Dragon. I'm wearing Game of Thrones t-shirt. um, where we know that the player characters are engaged in other activities, downtime activities, but every time we tune in, we're going to tune into what they're doing today. Same characters, different day. So today they're on a battlefield, and we know they've been battling for weeks, and they're tired, and they need food, and they need backup, and the player characters are running around reinforcing or being decoys or whatever. And then the next day we follow them, we know that the battle was won, but or not next day, but it could be days later. They've won the battle, but now here's the time to break down the treaties, and peacetime talks are terrible. So now the player characters have to show up to a dinner party, and they really don't want to be there because they want to be on the front lines, and so it's basically a continuation of a story. And we're just going to go, hey guys, when certain people aren't allowed, can't be here, and we come back and we dip in, we're just going to assume 3 weeks pass by, okay? And everyone's like, sure, and then you go on and move on. And so you're basically checking in with the players as they're going on. And in this kind of same people, different day, you can start to add time elements to it. Characters are getting older. Maybe they're starting to start families and lay down roots. Maybe they can't do that and they have to move on, but they're leaving behind a legacy of disruption. As every time the players engage in something, everything changes once they engage in it. The next one is, I'm going to call it arcs and chapters. So some players are turned off by the idea of one shots, but they can't commit to 27 sessions of a campaign. So what you do is you divide it up into arcs and chapters, much like a book or even a series of movies or television show. They will break it up into arcs and chapters over an extended period of time. They break it up into small chunks. So player characters have to travel a far distance to go fight a great evil. So what you do is player characters need to leave the tavern, get a ship, and leave. That is one arc, right? It has a beginning, middle, and end. They get on the ship and they sail away into the distance to fight the great evil. That could be one arc. The next arc, they show up on a desert. They have to show up on a deserted island and navigate the island. That might be 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, but that is its own chapter, its own arc. You arrive on a deserted island and make camp and discover what's on the island. Okay, great. Then from there, you have another chapter. That chapter might be going through the accursed desert. And then the next chapter might be, slashing and hacking your way through the overgrown jungle. And then the next chapter might. Now I understand the point is we want to do 27 sessions to get to the mountain to kill the red dragon, but right now we're dealing with, we're eating an elephant, right? The only way to eat an elephant is the same way you eat anything. It's one bite at a time. So it's just one small thing. And you break up your campaign. So instead of putting in, sometimes it can be overwhelming to put in the minds of your players that they have to commit to 27 sessions. So instead, you just shrink it down. Now, at the end of this, they might finish 27 sessions without them thinking about it, but it's just one arc combined with one arc, one chapter plus another chapter plus another chapter. And as you go through, you just keep adding to it. Same characters, same storyline, same goal, but the goals are small. We need to survive the island. Goals are small. We need to get through this jungle. Goal small. We need to cross this desert. Another small goal. We need to go through the mountain range. Another small goal. We need to go into the great mountain. Another small goal. We need to get to the top of the mountain. Another small goal. We need to attack the dragon, right? And that could have taken 2 years. But if you crush them down small, that's all right. Tired Need Sleep says, I find the optimal length is 8 to 10 sessions to plan. Players will extend that themselves with tomfoolery. Tomfoolery. What a term I haven't heard in a while. I once went down a rabbit hole. You guys know that I love the language twists and turns. And I one time did you're going to make me do a deep dive into terminology we don't use anymore, but was pretty descriptive. Tomfoolery, hitherto, uh, heretofore, crestfallen. What's another one? Man, there's so many of them. I know it's a creature. Tommy knockers and scuttlebutt and Oh, there's so many of that that I did a search of, and I was just like, where do these terms come from? They're somewhat Victorian era ish terms and whatnot. Some of them flow into a modern era, but there's a bunch of them that are like really cool and funny and descriptive. And I always thought it would be really cool to use those as a replacement for terms that we normally use in standard like D20 role playing. Ha ha! Tidy Sue says, "I'm English. We still sometimes use archaic language. I love it. I absolutely love it. It, it it sends a message in my brain to think differently, and then I go, that is so cool. And usually there are compound words like scuttlebutt and like you said, tomfoolery, and you know when something is hitherto unknown before, something like those words. I love it. I love it. So anyway, we got to the end here. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate you guys just even coming back. I don't think you understand um, how much energy that gives me, because when you have a dead channel for like over a year, it's pretty impossible to get people to come back. So in summary, there's more than 9, but we're about 9 ways to stop canceling our role playing games. And I would really love game designers out there. It's too long. We need to address this in our games. And the only game I've seen that has done this, like I said, Ars Magica, um, um, Monty Cook's game Invisible Sun deals with it, where the dream world, our dreams, are a real place, and this world is a place to trap us here so that we cannot go back to where our real homes are at. And so in Invisible Sun, you play a dreamlike character who disappears, is drawn back into the so-called gray, the real world, the drudgery of our real world as we live it today. And that's a great idea too, where there's a reason why people disappear, because they get drawn back into a strange world. So anyway, guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Thank all of you who are from around the world and across this nation, who either get up at a strange period of time or partake of this show from this one guy at like 6 a.m. in the morning whose brain isn't quite up yet. but this is my coffee. So guys, thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.